This is the Vmoto Emax 120S. It's an electric scooter that's street legal. You can see there's like a license plate detachment right here on the back, and one that's not actually available anymore. This is a 2013 model, and it's kind of unique because it uses this gearless direct drive rear mounted hub motor, and you can see that the swing arm, it's kind of attached on this left side here, and so on the right side you've got a little bit more easy access to that rear wheel. It's a 4,000 watt motor, and it uses AC, so alternating current, and it has like subsets of magnets. By doing it that way versus DC, which I see a lot on electric bicycles, they're able to kind of keep the size and weight of this smaller. So it's just sort of unique, you know. It does increase the unsprung weight. You can see there's a lot of weight in the wheel rather than having that ride on the suspension of the main body of the bike. But it's very simple. It's meant to be pretty durable, and it's kind of interesting, worth calling out. Here's the battery box right here. It has four 12 volt 60 amp hour silicone lead acid cells. So it's a pretty interesting setup here. Basically, it's in series, so the 12 times 4, you get 48 volts, and you can see that designated right here on the wheel as well for that motor. And it's pretty peppy. It actually has 3 modes. It's kind of eco, normal, and then like a high speed mode. The top speed is 55 miles per hour at about 80 kilometers per hour. The lower speeds, eco is like 25 miles per hour, and then that's the eco, and then the normals maybe in like the low 30s. So this could really be used as a neighborhood electric vehicle, or you could, you know, conceivably take it on frontage roads or some of those higher speed situations. It's really interesting. Depending on how you drive this, you could get anywhere from, you know, the low or mid 20s up to 60 miles per charge. Of course, electricity, very affordable. You know, it's like, depending on where you live, 10 cents per kilowatt hour that we're talking about here. So you could charge this thing for well under $1. And of course, the difference being between a car, you know, that this is much smaller. It's just very efficient. It's going to be easier to park, that kind of thing. You can see we've got it up on this kind of double-legged rear kickstand. On the other side, you know, you can see sort of a more traditional kickstand. This one's a little bit easier to operate, where you have to push down really hard on the kind of the double-legged one. It's got these nice big hydraulic disc brakes, front and rear. They offer pretty good stopping power. And then these smaller diameter wheels, at least compared to like a traditional gas-powered motorcycle. These are 13-inch diameter, and then it's 130 by 60. So 130, that's millimeters, that's the circumference, and then 60 being kind of like the diameter. So, you know, pretty wide, decent traction. It's got decent suspension, kind of unique lights here. It's got brights, turn signals, all the stuff you'd expect. Mirrors, and then this decent little control console cockpit area. There's the turn signals and everything. I'll go through all of that in a minute. I did want to show under the seat, because these are very easy to charge. They just use a standard, you really don't have to twist this very far. You just kind of put the key in, and then I think twist to the, doing this right? Had a little bit of trouble with it earlier. There we go. Twisted to the left, just a little bit, it clicks. Got the instruction manual, a charge port that you just plug this cord into, and just plug it into a wall. So it's, you know, nice little cubby if you need to store something. Not a whole lot of room in here, and there's some tools. You know, decent. This in 2013, when it was brand new, the MSRP was like $4,400, but I think they've kind of liquidated the inventory, and you can get them for like under $2,000 now, which is interesting. So the story on this company, you know, Vmoto, it's an Australian company. Initially, this was just called Emax, okay? And this was a German company started by a gentleman who now runs a company called Govex. They were higher quality at that point in time, but eventually their manufacturer that was in China was, I think, started kind of competing directly with them, and ended up sort of acquiring Emax through Vmoto, which is that Australian company. So it sounds kind of confusing. What the results of this ultimately ends up is that they kind of cheapen the quality, some of the parts and stuff. They initially, and still, they really focus on getting batteries that kind of match in terms of resistance, because that helps to extend the life of these. Because again, you have 4 packs in there, and you want them to all be, they need to match. And it sounds like there have been some issues with that on these bikes, and just some of the components, electrical components, have had some issues. I've been testing quite a few of these. I actually took my motorcycle license class, permit class here in Austin, Texas, at one of the shops here, and got to try them all out, you know. And the company that does this, it's called Electric Avenue, right? And they kind of coordinate with the state, and they do these motorcycle classes, and this is what you test on. It's really cool because it's, you know, it's relatively light, it's relatively simple. You don't have to worry about a clutch or shifting gears as with a traditional motorcycle. It's also cheaper, and they can just charge these. They're cleaner, there's no chain, there's no belt. A lot of advantages to something like this, but because this bike in particular is using the sealed lead acid, or silicon lead acid in this case, it's still like a 420-pound bike. So it's not the super lightest thing in the world, but it's, you know, it's still a very accessible bike. And I think anyone who's watching this review and maybe looking at one, you're probably looking at like a used one. You might just want to keep in mind the batteries. I think they are replaceable, but trying to match them all up and everything could be kind of a question mark. Also, the quality, since Vmoto took over, and that Chinese company, it's a little bit lower, you know, on some of these later models. I think 2013 was the last time that they actually produced this particular model, but I've actually had a lot of fun riding on it, and I do think that this rear wheel design is kind of cool. This isn't a performance bike, so a little bit more unsprung weight, you know, whatever, it's not a huge deal. It's a pretty bulletproof rear wheel setup right there. So we've got the kind of the rear fender, we got all the reflectors. Again, I touched on this earlier, but got this little luggage thing that can kind of help your backpack from falling, and you've got a little area there between your legs. Nice suspension on the front. So to start this thing, you head over, get your key, just pop it right in here, and then twist it to, let's see here, might actually have to flip this over. There we go. Key seems like only one-sided, which surprises me. So switch that to on, and then you can kind of activate up here, and you can see the display panel. It's really simple. You've just got sort of your speedometer up there in kilometers per hour as well as miles per hour. And then you've got your empty full gauge right there. Looks like 6 dots. And your voltage over here. And then your mode. So this is that red button right here. So right now we're in normal. Again, that's maybe like the low 30s in terms of top speed, miles per hour. And then max, that's where you get up to like 50, 55 max speed. And eco, and of course eco, you know, you're down in the 25 mile per hour speed range, but you're gonna get a lot better, you know, range driving slower like that, a lot less wind resistance, and especially if you kind of smooth into it instead of just like flooring it off the line. So these make really good classroom sort of teaching tools as far as electric scooters go, because they are, you know, you can kind of regulate the speed that way. So I'm gonna take it back up to max there when we do our tests. Here's the brights button. You kind of see that going on over here. Let's see here. There we go. That's how that works. We got our signals, and I noticed it makes kind of a funny noise. Hear that chirping? Yeah, so you don't forget. Then you hit the white button to turn it off. And then there's a horn. Cool. And I think that's kind of it. And actually, there is a display button here. Okay, cool. So you've got a couple of extra readouts here. Nice. And then your twist throttle. And then 2 brakes. There we go. I think this is the rear brake on the left. And then the front brake on the right. So that's sweet. Okay. Well, I'm gonna move the bike and get the camera mounted up so you can actually see this thing in action and listen to the motor. So the first thing you notice about the 100S is that it's just so heavy, you know, and every time I get up to it and I kind of push it over, it's definitely noticeable as compared to like the new Govex machines, and that is the S, the silicone lead acid. you know, and it works. This is still maybe lighter than some gasoline-powered motorcycles, but it's a big trade-off. I'm gonna go ahead and just take it around now. There we go. Pretty good stopping time. Although, you know, the increased weight does impact that to some extent. The steering is pretty good. It doesn't require me to push quite as hard as an actual motorcycle. Again, I think the rake on the front just isn't as severe as some of like the kind of the relaxed Harley style motorcycles that I've tried out there. And so that's nice. They've kind of set that up right. The mirrors I also like. They're real easy to see, fairly adjustable. You can kind of swivel the arm, and then there's the mirror inside can actually be adjusted too. I'm gonna take it around and do some maneuvers. Going extra slow here, testing balance. There we go. Deep turn. I'm going to do a stop. Yep. Pretty good. So that is the Vmoto Emax 120S. You know, it's an electric scooter that's, you know, does pretty well in terms of top speed. I like the modes, the different settings it's got that way, and it's pretty smooth, although it is a little bit heavier because of those silicone lead acid batteries. And again, it's not really being produced anymore, so just kind of keep that in mind if you're looking at this bike. For the full write-up, I'll see you back at ElectricRideReview.com. And if you have this, you have any advice or feedback about it, feel free to do a video response or maybe check out the forums. I'll try to link to those, and ride safe out there, guys.